With more than 25,000 students, UNC Charlotte is uniquely positioned to provide top-notch academic, athletic, and cultural programs for our campus community and the greater Charlotte region. We hope all of you will enjoy your time here today and stay connected to this great university in the future.
So I will start the first question. Senator, I'll start with you. What, and Erskine, you get this one too. What motivates you? I mean, you both. One of the things that struck me, Senator, and I'm sorry, but let me back up. One of the things that struck me both is both of you, not just in your CVs and your bios, but you both reference your father's quote, and Erskine, your father's quote about the community woodpile, which is very descriptive. What is it? Is it something your father said to you that motivates you? Is it some faith you got from your mother? Is it some redemption social issue? What drives you to do the things that you do?
I had an amazing father and a mother, beautiful mother who was very musical, talented. She played the violin and the organ and the piano and tried to get me to play the violin, and I failed miserably. Dad was a earthy, tough, fair guy. He loved politics, and when things would come up he didn't like, he expressed himself very clearly. And his view was, stop whining and get in the game. If you don't like what's going on, instead of whining and moaning and bitching, get in the fray. And that's a good thing to learn. More people ought to learn that in America. If you don't like what's going on and it appalls you and grinds you, get in the game. And I have a wonderful brother, 13 months apart. They always said, now, Peter will let a sleeping dog lie, and Al will go kick it. I just like to mix it up, especially with people without any sense of humor. Because they're so stiff. They're like a fireplace poker. They're as rigid as a fireplace poker, but without the occasional warmth. And so, I get into it. I took on the AARP when I was in the Senate. I said, who are you people? How much do you make? How many accountants do you have? How many lawyers? What do you do with your money? They didn't like that at all. They've never forgotten. But we do enjoy talking to them. I asked their leadership, are there any patriots here or just marketers? I didn't hear anybody chuckle, especially older people. Anyway, we can get into all that, but you know, get in the game. And I've taken on the Iraq Study Group. I was on the Select Commission on Immigration. I just like to mix it up. Mm-hmm. And I get plenty of opportunities, except with this cat. This is one of the finest men I've ever met or worked with in my life. And we've had a wonderful time. We figure that we have achieved a goal that few people ever achieve at this stage of life. We have effectively pissed off everyone in America.
We can go in so many directions with that one. I would like to come back to Erskine, what drives you? What starts you?
I love this guy. You all are for such a treat, you're not going to believe it. When we were standing out there, and Chris was going through all of the resume stuff, he said, Erskine, tell him about your Uncle Sam. I said, okay, I'll do it. And I was born and raised in Greensboro, and when my Uncle Sam passed away, the obituary editor of the Greensboro Daily News called up to ask about him. And his wife kind of went on and on about all the things he had done, like Chris did about Al and me. And after a few minutes, the obituary editor said, now, Miss Bowles, you do know that we now charge $5 a word for every word we put in the obituary. And she said, oh, no, I didn't know that. No, she said, in that case, just put in there, Sam died. This is a true story. And he said, well, Miss Bowles, we can't do that. You see, we have this 5-word minimum. Oh, she said, oh, my goodness. She said, in that case, put in there, Sam died. Cadillac for sale.
That's a good.
So don't let those resumes get to you. We've had the best time together. Al and I, as we first started working on this deficit commission, we agreed we didn't do mush and we didn't do BS. That we were going to, we were going to tell people what the real problems were. We were going to answer any question that people had, and we were going to try to propose some real solutions that could fix the long-term fiscal problems of the country. For me, I did have a great dad, and I had a great mom too. But when I was y'all's age, I went to this deal in Winston-Salem where my dad was supposed to get this big award, and he walked up to the microphone and he said, "Thank you, I really appreciate this a lot." And he was supposed to make this great big speech, but then he turned and looked at my two sisters and me, and he said, "But I don't want you all to judge me based on what I have done." He said, "I want you to judge me based on what my children do for others." And that's like, what? Yeah. But he really believed that. He believed he was a product of a great education he'd gotten at the university, of the morals and values he'd gotten from his parents, and that if he was going to make a big difference, it would be passing along those to his kids, and they would try to do something to make this world a little bit better place. And so my sisters and I and my older brother have tried to do our part to what he called add to the community woodpile. You know, and by that he meant in the old days people used to, in the South, go out and chop some logs for their family, but as they were on their way home, they'd throw a few of them on the community woodpile to try to do their part to help the community.
Mm-hmm. You know, you all clearly have been on the road now for a while together. I mean, you probably finish each other's sentences to some degree. What kind of relationship did you all have before co-chairing this committee?
Well, I really had never known Erskine. I met him at a function in Washington, I think during his campaign against Elizabeth Dole, because I was Bob Dole's assistant leader for 10 years. Bob said, "I want you to meet Erskine Bowles. He's a wonderful person." As Elizabeth said when we were appointed, first call I had was from Elizabeth and Bob Dole saying Erskine Bowles is one of the finest people we've ever worked with. And then, of course, when we came down here to install Phil Dubois, because Phil was president of the University of Wyoming for about 7 years, and he and Lisa. So when I wasn't in the Senate then, but I was very active in fundraising for the university, and we came here and then met Erskine, who came to the inaugural activities of the installation of Phil Dubois as president of this fine university. So then, you know, just off and on, but really hadn't worked together until Joe Biden called me in January of 2010 and said, "Al, I got a real deal for you." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "The co-chair of the National Commission, your own Congress people killed it. Don't forget, this should have been a legislative commission, not an executive order. They had 60 votes, or they wouldn't have gone to the floor, and 7 of the co-sponsors voted against it. McCain, McConnell, I think, well, anyway, 7 Republicans voted against it, which left a serious issue to the American people and nothing to handle it. So he appointed us co-chairs, and we said, well, we're not going to do this until we visit with you. And Erskine and I went and visited with the president, had a very timely visit. Everything's on the table. He said yes, and and there it is. So we went to work for 10 months, serious work.
Erskine, how did you get the call? Where did the call come from? When you found out you're going to be working with Senator Simpson, what were your thoughts?
The chief of staff called. That was Rahm Emanuel at that point in time, and asked me if I would think about doing it and being co-chair. I, of course, asked who would be the other co-chair. When he told me it would be Senator Simpson, I was interested, because then I knew something real would come out of it. And we then went and together met with the president, and having negotiated the balanced budget in 1997 between President Clinton and Speaker Gingrich and Leader Lott, I knew how to do this, and I knew we needed to be a team, and I knew we needed to build up trust. But I also knew that we had to know what our client really wanted to get out of this, what the president really wanted, because there was no sense Al and I ending up here and him being way down here and not getting anything done at the end of the day. And so we spent a lot of time with him up front defining success. We spent a lot of time working with the economic team knowing exactly what they wanted to get out of this. And then they picked the other 16 members of the commission, and off we went.
Mm-hmm. Do we have some tweets? All right. Well, this is a great one. What's been your greatest, what do you feel has been your greatest sacrifice as a public servant? Senator, I'll start with you.
Oh, I never felt a sacrifice. I did.
With family, time?
Oh, well, thank heaven. Let me tell you, if you don't have family and friends and you're thinking of politics, you want to do something else. And furthermore, if politics is your only interest, that is a purely barbaric experience. You have to have the softening agents of life, which are music and theater and books and art. Those are the softening agents. Because if it's just politics, you're going to meet a lot of hard-hearted people who are full of it.
Erskine, public service, sacrifice?
Yeah, I would say so. Particularly in the political side of it, it's you trade your banker and your broker in for a psychiatrist and a lawyer. This whole gotcha environment, the highly partisan nature, the emotional sacrifice is pretty strong. I mean, it's very tough on these guys in both parties to be involved in public service. For me, the biggest sacrifice was being away from home. When you work in the White House, it is literally 7 days and 7 nights. As chief of staff, you'd start the morning at 5:30 when you'd get up and read 4 or 5 newspapers and you'd throw up. And I always said he couldn't have done that, but sometimes he did. Then you'd get in the Secret Service lives in your house. You get in the car, you ride down to the White House, you meet with the CIA briefer, then you meet with the foreign policy team, the national security team, the domestic policy team, then the White House staff, and by then it's about 8:30 and the president comes over and you update him on the changes that have occurred in the world, and then you kind of go your separate ways. And in an average day, you'll deal with Bosnia and Northern Ireland and taxation, the environment, energy, and then you have lunch. When Friday gets there, you say, "Thank God it's Friday. Only 2 more work days till Monday." And Saturday is just like Friday, especially if you're doing one of the Sunday shows, because you got to spend a lot of time getting ready for that. And before you know it, it's Monday again, and the clock just goes. Every night, I've never believed you judge productivity by the number of hours you work, but you just can't get it done in an 8 to 10 hour day. It just doesn't. It's impossible. So you work most nights, and usually once every 2 weeks or once a week, you'll get a call that some major crisis is going on in the world, and it's gone through all the appropriate cabinet people, and you either have to make the decision or you have to wake up the president. And maybe on every other one of those calls, you wake him up in the middle of the night. So it is a full-time job, and the breadth of things you have to deal with is pretty amazing.
How do we change either incentives, or how do we change the game so good people who are not paranoid about folks finding out and the media getting hold of some small piece of information that they could blow up into some embarrassing situation, how do we get the folks that need to be engaged in public service engaged in public service?
Most of the spirited and exciting people I know who love to get in the scrap and do and make decisions don't do it. So because of something in the past.
Right.
There's a picture of them with a roach clip in their hand, with the smoke rising and gazing at it,
Oh my God.
And that is not a good campaign poster. So with me, I had been on federal probation for shooting mailboxes. I was on a 2-year federal probation. Before I met the fair Ann, I got drunk in Laramie and got in a fight with a cop and got thrown in the clink for a night. I put all that out there in the beginning because I knew if the media found it later, they would make an orgy out of it. I threw it all out there, the first big campaign event I had, because my probation officer was sitting in the audience. And I said, Dan, there's J.B. Mosley. There he is, and I've told you about him all through these years, and let's go down and meet him. Of course, I took Ann down. He said, I've been watching you. Proud of you, kid. You know, you've done, you know, he'd come to see me, and I'd be in the pool hall. I'd say, just on my way to choir practice. I had this green patch on my, they said, what is that? I said, mowing the lawn. Well, no, it wasn't. It was playing pool. And, of course, that will leave green on that meat of your hand. Anyway, he said, I just am proud of you and here to support you. And I got up and I said, you know, this is a great town, Jackson, Wyoming. My grandparents lived here. They're buried up on the hill. But there's a special man in this audience, and that's my probation officer. And I didn't say it in smart aleck. And I said, he got me settled down in life before this classy lady did. I got every vote in that building.
Erskine, in the second decade of a new of a new millennium, I mean, is the game, the way that Senator Simpson depicts it, is it more acute though? Does it keep more of the good folks from stepping up the way it is now?
You know, I don't know. I've always said, don't ask me about politics. I've got empirical data. I'm not very good at it. But, you know, you look at the people in North Carolina who have been elected. And, you know, one of the people, as the example I lost to, was Richard Burr. He's a great guy. You know, and we couldn't have had the success that we had on this commission if Richard Burr hadn't gone to Tom Coburn, who's about as conservative a senator as you can find in the U.S. Senate, and said, you can trust this guy. And, you know, here's a guy who, you know, I was in a heated election battle with, and we put all that politics aside, and we decided we would work together for the good of the country. And I think that's what it takes. That's what I'm more worried about than the gotcha. That's what I'm more worried about than the high partisanship. It's people who are willing to put that partisanship aside occasionally and try to do what's right for the country. And if you look at the commission that Al and I had a chance to head up, we had to spend, what, Al, the first 4 months building up trust. Mm-hmm. Just getting people to speak to each other, and to talk to each other, and to listen.
In commission meetings?
In the commission meetings. Just building up some trust and confidence and eating together and spending time together. And the result of that was that there were 6 members of the U.S. Senate on our commission, and 5 of them voted for this plan, all 3 Republicans and 2 out of the 3 Democrats. But what really made it remarkable to so many people was that we had probably the most liberal member of the Senate in Dick Durbin from Illinois vote for it, and the most conservative in Tom Coburn vote for it. But again, they were willing to set aside their partisanship. They were willing to gore their own sacred cows in order to make the kind of sacrifice you got to make to get something positive done for the country.
So if you got that kind of, let's call it agreement, if you got that kind of agreement and consensus within the committee, then why can't it be duplicated now?
I don't know. It just takes too long. They are out raising money day and night. They have a chore before them every day. They wake up and their staff says, you're running for re-election. And don't forget, a lot of them worship the god of re-election, which means more to them than the country. Some of them, that's true. And they'll say, well, here's your Rolodex. You've got 15 calls to make. You have to get out of the office to do it. And you're on the phone all morning raising bucks for your next campaign. That's a terrible diversion. And now with the Supreme Court decision that there is a corporate personhood, that a corporation is like a First Amendment person and has an unlimited right to raise bucks. I mean, that's just goofy in my mind, but that's not my province.
You know, everybody was kind of like my mama. You know, my mama was 91, and when I'd go see her when I came home, she'd say, oh, Erskine, I'm so proud of you. You're doing the right thing. You're doing it for the country. You know, you're being so physically conservative, and your dad would be proud of you, and gosh, just keep doing it, but don't mess with my Medicare. You know, and that's kind of like everybody was like my mama, you know. And Al always talks about, you know, the special interest, and you know, it's everybody in Washington and every member of this 12-person super committee today gets it. They know that the fiscal path we are on today is not sustainable. They know that these deficits are like a cancer. They're literally going to destroy the country from within. But it's very, very hard for them to politically make the decision to go against something that you are for. They understand the economics. They understand the arithmetic. They know we have to reduce these deficits by at least $4 trillion over the next decade, or we're going to be in enormous trouble. We'll be Greece. We'll be Italy. We'll be Ireland. We'll be Portugal. Believe me, it's easy to predict. It's the most predictable economic crisis in history. But the political ramifications of going against a special interest is really, really tough.
Senator Erskine, just a question. It seemed to me when this report was filed and made public and you gave it to the president in December of last year, it seemed that there was an opportunity for this commission to be the scapegoat politically. President, Congress could have said, we set these guys up, we asked them to do it, we're going to follow what they do come hell or high water.
As I said, you know, when we first took this on, you know, the first rule when you're the negotiator is to know your client and to define success. Well, we did spend enough time with the president, with the economic team, to define success. And the report that we brought back exceeded everything we talked about. I mean, I've laughed a lot of times. If Bill Clinton had been president, he'd just put his arm around me and said, "Oh, this is great, I did this is wonderful."
He would. He would.
And we live today in a world of limited resources. And limited resources mean just one thing: choices and priorities. And I told somebody it's a little bit like this great Nobel Prize-winning scientist, Ernst Rutherford. When his Nobel Prize-winning project was running out of money, he turned to his team and said, "Hey, we're running out of money. Now we got to start thinking." And that's what America is. We're running out of money. Now we got to start thinking. We can't just do everything anymore. We've got to do those things that make the most sense. Let me give you two examples. When I was president of a university, one of the things I wanted to do at the university was to admit that we not only needed to be part of the solution to improve K through 12, but we had to admit that we were part of the problem, because we produce most of the teachers. And we had to produce not just more teachers, but better teachers, more math and science teachers. And so the first thing I did was I said, if we're going to improve our schools of education and produce better teachers, are there programs in Washington that we can turn to get some resources to do that? Well, as it turns out, yeah, there are 82 programs. Now, do we need 2 or 3 really good ones? You bet. But we don't need 82. We do at the university, at all 16 of our campuses, we do about $1.5 billion worth of research annually. That research is very important to creating the jobs of the future. You know, you can point to companies in North Carolina that have directly come from that research. But is all of that high value-added research? Absolutely not. And we live in a time of limited resources. We have to make choices. We have to set priorities. If we don't, you know, we're going to run out of money, and then we're going to be in a real world of hurt. And, you know, we've got deficits of $1.4 trillion, and we have trillion-dollar deficits as far as the eye can see. And you are the guys that are going to have to pay for it. And everywhere Al and I go, people ask us, what are the cause of these deficits? And we always turn it around and say, well, you tell us what you think the causes of this deficit are. And we hear the same things from people like you all everywhere we go. And it's because people are uninformed as opposed to being informed by the media. The first thing people say is, oh, it's waste, fraud, and abuse. And then they say, oh, it's foreign aid. And then they say it's oil subsidies. And sometimes they say it's Nancy Pelosi's airplane. Things like that. And all of those are just an infinitesimally small part of what the real problems are. The things that contribute to the deficit are the facts that we in this country spend twice as much as any other developed country in the world, whether you talk about it as a percent of GDP or on a per capita basis, on health care. And unfortunately, while we spend twice as much, our outcomes are not that good. We're not getting our money's worth. We rank somewhere between 25th and 50th in things like infant mortality and life expectancy and preventable death. So health care is the number one cause of it. The number two cause is defense spending. We spend more than the next 14 largest countries combined on defense. We can't afford that. We can't afford to be the world's policeman. Some guy stood up, one of these places Al and I were at, and they said, hey, we got this treaty that the U.S. has with Taiwan that will protect them if they're invaded by the Chinese. There's only one problem with that. We have to borrow the money from China to do it. It's like crazy. Those are the first two, healthcare, defense. The third is we give away half the tax revenue that comes into the country in the form of deductions and credits. It's just backdoor spending. It's just spending by another name. Al and I call them tax earmarks. We take in net about $1 to $1.1 trillion of tax income into the country every year. That's it. And that's because we have $1.1 trillion of tax expenditures, credits, and deductions. If we wiped out all of those tax expenditures and nobody got them anymore in the future, and we took 92% of the money and used it to reduce income tax rates, and only 8% of the money, which would be $100 billion a year, to reduce the deficit, we could reduce the deficit by $1 trillion over the next 10 years, and we could take income tax rates to 8% up to $70,000. Make sure I get this right. 14% up to $210,000, and have a maximum rate of 23%. And we could take the corporate rate down to 26%, and we could pay to go on a territorial system, which we're now about the only country in the world that's not, so that $1 trillion that's captured overseas could be brought back to this country. And I think that would create dynamic growth and real jobs in this country. But we got to do something like that. So that's the third reason. And the fourth reason we have these deficits is compound interest. Today we spend about $200 billion a year on interest. If this super committee takes a pass and they just do nothing, and we stick our heads in the ground and take the ostrich theory, by the year 2020, we'll be spending over $1 trillion a year in interest cost alone. That's $1 trillion that we can't invest in education or infrastructure or high value added research, and even worse, it's $1 trillion that's going to Asia to educate their kids, to build their infrastructure, to do their research there, so the next new thing is created over there instead of here. So those are the real reasons. And that's the kind of transparency that Al and I've tried to bring to this. No BS, straight talk. This is what's causing the deficit. If we want to cure it, we have to make some tough decisions. There's no easy way out.
We're going to have to cut it short, folks. We've run a little bit long. But please thank Senator Simpson, Erskine Bowles. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.